I took 3, with a large shot of whiskey. I don't know what was in those pills, morphia, I suppose, but they did the trick. The pain was still there, but it seemed to belong to a Wilfred James currently existing on some other level of reality. My head swam, the ceiling began to turn gently above me, the image of tiny firemen arriving to douse the blaze of infection before it could take hold grew clearer. The wind was strengthening, and to my half-dreaming mind, the constant low rattle of sleet against the house sounded more like rats than ever, but I knew better. I think I even said so aloud. I know better, Arlette, you don't fool me. As consciousness dwindled and I began to slip away, I realized that I might be going for good, that the combination of shock, booze, and morphine might end my life. I would be found in a cold farmhouse, my skin blue-gray, my torn hand resting on my belly. The idea did not frighten me, on the contrary, it comforted me. While I slept, the sleet turned to snow. When I woke at dawn the following morning, the house was as chilly as a tomb and my hand had swelled up to twice its ordinary size. The flesh around the bite was ashy gray, but the first 3 fingers had gone a dull pink that would be red by the end of the day. Touching anywhere on that hand except for the pinky caused excruciating pain. Nevertheless, I wrapped it as tightly as I could, and that reduced the throbbing. I got a fire started in the kitchen stove, one-handed. It was a long job, but I managed, and then drew up close, trying to get warm. All of me except for the bitten hand, that part of me was warm already. Warm and pulsing like a glove with a rat hiding inside it. By mid-afternoon I was feverish, and my hand had swelled so tightly against the bandages that I had to loosen them. Just doing that made me cry out. I needed doctoring, but it was snowing harder than ever, and I wouldn't be able to get as far as Cotteries, let alone all the way to Hemmingford home. Even if the day had been clear and bright and dry, how would I ever have managed to crank the truck or the tea with just one hand? I sat in the kitchen, feeding the stove until it roared like a dragon, pouring sweat and shaking with cold, holding my bandaged club of a hand to my chest, and remembering the way kindly Mrs. Macready had surveyed my cluttered, not particularly prosperous dooryard. Are you on the exchange, Mr. James? I see you are not. No. I was not. I was by myself on the farm I had killed for, with no means of summoning help. I could see the flesh beginning to turn red beyond where the bandages stopped, at the wrist, full of veins that would carry the poison all through my body. The fireman had failed. I thought of tying the wrist off with elastics, of killing my left hand in an effort to save the rest of me, and even of amputating it with the hatchet we used to chop up kindling and behead the occasional chicken. Both ideas seemed perfectly plausible, but they also seemed like too much work. In the end I did nothing except hobble back to the hurt locker for more of Arlette's pills. I took 3 more, this time with cold water, my throat was burning, and then resumed my seat by the fire. I was going to die of the bite. I was sure of it and resigned to it. Death from bites and infections was as common as dirt on the plains. If the pain became more than I could bear, I would swallow all the remaining pain pills at once. What kept me from doing it right away, apart from the fear of death, which I suppose afflicts all of us, to a greater or lesser degree, was the possibility that someone might come, Harlan, or Sheriff Jones, or kindly Mrs. Macready. It was even possible that Attorney Lester might show up to hector me some more about those goddamned 100 acres. But what I hoped most of all was that Henry might return. He didn't, though. It was Arlette who came. You may have wondered how I know about the gun Henry bought in the Dodge Street pawnshop, and the bank robbery in Jefferson Square. If you did, you probably said to yourself, well, it's a lot of time between 1922 and 1930, enough to fill in plenty of details at a library stocked with back issues of the Omaha World Herald. I did go to the newspapers, of course. And I wrote to people who met my son and his pregnant girlfriend on their short, disastrous course from Nebraska to Nevada. Most of those people wrote back, willing enough to supply details. That sort of investigative work makes sense, and no doubt satisfies you. But those investigations came years later, after I left the farm, and only confirmed what I already knew. Already? You ask, and I answer simply, yes. Already. And I knew it not just as it happened, but at least part of it before it happened. The last part of it. How? The answer is simple. My dead wife told me. You disbelieve, of course. I understand that. Any rational person would.